Well, good morning, friends. Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. Happy Lord's Day. Great to be with you on this Sunday morning. And we're coming to you with this brief broadcast to bring you the Daily Election Challenge. This is an action item that we're suggesting each day between now and Election Day. And the action item for today has to do with the U.S. House of Representatives. As you know, in the elections of 2020, we're talking about many elections throughout the 50 states on all different levels of government. And one of the key elections is for whoever wants to represent you in the U.S. House of Representatives. In the U.S. Congress, we each have one representative. Each state has two senators, as you know, so you have two senators representing you in the Senate. But today I want to focus on the House. You have one representative in your congressional district. Who is that? And who is running against that person? The point I want to make with you today is that we have to win back the House of Representatives and change it from Democrat control to Republican control. Now, those of you that tune into my programs and have already voted, I think it's pretty safe to say that you voted for the pro-life, that is, Republican candidate. But in case you haven't, and even if you have, this action item has to do with educating other voters in your district about the importance, the value of switching, if you have a Democrat incumbent, switching over to the Republican, whoever is challenging him or her, or if you're in a district that already has a Republican representative, keep that person in there. Here are some of the reasons why. If we want President Trump to remain in the White House, which we certainly do, and I know most of you do, we also need to give him a Congress that'll work with him, a Congress that'll help advance his agenda. You know, when you look at promiseskept.com and the amazing list of accomplishments that he and his administration made, and by the way, the Biden supporters out there, has a single one of them read that list at promiseskept.com? If you know any Biden supporters, challenge them on that. But not to get sidetracked, you look at that amazing list of accomplishments, keep in mind, standing on its own, it's amazing and historic. But considering that he accomplished so many of these things with an opposition House, a House of Representatives run by Pelosi and her Democrat colleagues who are not interested in governing, not interested in doing the work of the American people, but rather only interested in obstructing, delaying, lying with fake investigations about Russia collusion, about fake impeachment hoaxes. The president and his team, amazing things despite the active efforts of the House to obstruct him. And let me tell you something about these efforts of obstruction on the part of the Democrats. They know, and they always knew, that there was no merit in their false accusations and their fake investigations and their phony impeachment. They knew already that it would amount to nothing. Why did they do it? Because they just wanted to accomplish two things. Number one, take the time and energy and attention of the president's team who are trying to accomplish policy goals that they don't agree with, take the time and attention of that team away from doing that work and instead having to focus on preparing testimonies for their hearings, producing documents that they requested, responding to subpoenas. This takes time, this takes energy, this takes attention. They wanted that time, energy, attention of the president's team to be taken away from the president's agenda and focused instead on their phony impeachments and hoaxes and investigations. And the second purpose of them doing this, despite the fact that they knew full well that they would lead nowhere in terms of substance, there was no Russian collusion, there was no problem with the phone call to the Ukraine, etc., here's the other thing they were trying to accomplish. They wanted their garbage to be in the headlines rather than the president's successes. God forbid to Pelosi and the Democrats that in the headlines would be The lowest unemployment rates in American history among African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans. God forbid the headlines would read that President Trump lifted up 6.6 million people from poverty or had more people working in America than at any other time in American history. God forbid that the headlines would talk about the median household income rising under President Trump to 5 times what it was in any of the 8 years of the Obama and Biden administration. God forbid that VA choice or VA accountability or right to try or the strengthening of our educational system or any of these things would be the headlines. No, they want the headlines to be Russia collusion, impeachment, etc. Anything to try to make President Trump look bad even though they knew it was false. That's what they wanted their headlines to be, and they have a very cooperative media. The point is, we're going to get President Trump back into the White House, and we all need to work like crazy to make that happen in this next week and this week and 2 days that we have left. But equally important, we got to give him a Congress that'll work with him. Get that House of Representatives out of Democrat hands. Now, it's not only because that all they do is obstruct instead of govern. But there's another reason too. We need to accomplish positive legislation in many different areas. And of course, the one that I work with in the area of is pro-life, in the area of abortion. Many of you work in this movement too. Some people wonder, well, how come, Planned Parenthood hasn't been defunded yet? Well, the president has, in fact, defunded the abortion industry to the extent that his executive power allows. But he doesn't make law. The Constitution does not allow him to make law, and he's not going to try to do so. He doesn't make law. The Congress does. The president told them he wants to sign a bill to defund Planned Parenthood. He wants to sign a bill to stop these late-term abortions. He wants to sign a bill to stop infanticide, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But he can't just sign a bill because he wants to. Congress has to put the bill on his desk. And Congress can't put the bill on his desk unless both the House and the Senate agree on the bill. So the reason these things take so long is that we have too many cycles, too many Congresses, where we have divided government like we have now. The House is under solidly pro-abortion control. The Senate, on the other hand, is under pro-life control. Now, the good news about that is that no pro-abortion bill can get to the president's desk. And even if it did get past the pro-life Senate somehow, he already indicated he would veto it. And the pro-life Republicans indicated they would uphold his veto, both in the House and in the Senate. But the fact of the matter is that it also means we can't get a pro-life bill to his desk either until we get united government, both the House and the Senate, under pro-life control, which right now in political history in America means Republican control. That's just the fact of the matter. We got to fire Pelosi. We have a chance to do that in this election. We can win back the House, but it requires each of you, my friends, paying attention, and this is our Election Day challenge for today. Pay attention, find out today, if you don't already know, I'm sure many of you do know very well, who is running for the U.S. House in your district? Who's the incumbent? Who's the challenger? Who's Republican? Who's Democrat? And get the Republicans in there. This is crucially important to the progress not only of the pro-life cause, but of all the other fantastic agenda items that the president wants to see implemented for the good of not only the unborn, but all the rest of us, for the good of our families and our future and our courts and our safety and our economy and our borders and everything else. So indicate all of this to the other voters within your district. And here's the thing about infanticide. It's hard to believe, but in this country there are not adequate protections in place for babies who are actually born alive after a failed abortion. Sometimes abortions fail to kill the baby. It does happen. And the protections for these children are not adequate. The Republicans have been trying to address this with a piece of legislation that would strengthen and fill some of the gaps that are currently there for the protection of these children. We're talking about born children. We're not talking anymore about abortion or children in the womb. We're talking about children who are outside the womb and completely separate from the mother's body and are in need of medical attention. Republicans have introduced a bill that says, well, give them medical attention. We're not going to tell the doctor what treatment they need. The doctor can figure that out, but get them the attention. Don't let them just lie there and die or kill them. And here's the point. In this current House of Representatives led by Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, not only do they not want this bill, they won't even permit discussion of it. Throughout this Congress, throughout this current Congress, when the Democrats have controlled the House, the Republicans have repeatedly requested that there be consideration for this bill, and the Democrats have refused every time. It is sick. And brothers and sisters, that alone should disqualify these Democrat House members from having another term. That alone should disqualify any Democrat challengers of Republicans who currently hold their seats. Now, if you want to find out more about this, and if you feel like, you would have a hard time convincing your fellow citizens that this is even true, one website you can use is bornalive.us. bornalive.us. You will be able to see the information about this. Babies are born alive, they are not adequately protected, and the Democrats in the House are refusing to protect them. This is outrageous. But we still have a week and 2 days. We've got to win back the House. And brothers and sisters, I want to thank all of you for making every effort to do that. I see a lot of great comments here about voting red all the way. And as far as people who mistakenly think that, quote unquote, the church should stay out of the government, listen, the church is not trying to take over the delivery of the mail or the, who's going to be carrying out any of the government appointed positions. Government does its work. We don't want to have a standing army or anything like that. Neither does the government, I'm sure, want to decide who your pastor is or what readings we read in the Sunday Mass. But church and government, you think there's no connection? You think that if the government allows babies, if a political party allows babies to die on a clinical medical table without getting any proper medical attention, you think, some people sometimes come on here and seem to think, that we're supposed to be quiet about that? Listen, that has nothing to do with church. That has to do with our humanity. You can't live with yourself if you can't speak up about something like that. So no thanks to those who say the church should be quiet about government. You know what happens when that happens? You end up having a godless government and an irrelevant church. So no thanks. We're going to speak up. We're going to make a difference. You're going to make a difference. I'm encouraging you, brothers and sisters, to take on your active role in shaping this nation and leading it in the right direction, just like our president is doing, the Republican Party is doing. Everybody's got flaws, but my goodness, we are moving under President Trump in the right direction. Carlos, right? Right, Carlos? I see Carlos. Right direction, right, Carlos? All right, God bless you all, friends. DailyElectionChallenge.com. Check out not only, the one for today we're going to post in a little while, but you'll see there the ones from the previous days as well. Let's do all of them, and let's gain some great victories. God bless you. We'll be back at 10 a.m. Eastern Time for the Mass. Have a great day.
I think we have Richard Lee, we have Jim Garlow, and we have Father Frank Pavone, someplace there in the audience, so I appreciate you. I appreciate you.
Follow him, Father Frank Pavone, Fr. Frank Pavone, on Twitter. He is the National Director of Priests for Life. Please go to priestsforlife.org.